All right, it looks like we are live. So I always like to start by introducing ourselves. So I will let you go first, Anna.
Yeah, so my name's Anna. I'm an OCD and mental health advocate over on Instagram. And I have lived with OCD almost my entire life and just enjoy advocating for this really difficult disorder.
Yes, and spreading awareness, yes, and
Yes,
myth busting and stigma
always,
smashing.
always.
Yes. So I am Molly. I also have lived with OCD for most of, if not all of my life. And I, as well, love to advocate on Instagram, share my story, my experiences, and I also do work for OCD. So I am a peer advisor. So, oh, sorry, the mouse started like moving. That was really freaky. Yes, I work for an OCD. I am a peer advisor. When members call us and get connected to a therapist, they will go through a peer advisor if they wish. And there are a few of us on the team. And we are there to help support members who are going through this since we have been through the program ourselves. So that is my role within OCD. Then Anna and I have been doing these lives every Thursday in June, and they're so fun to just get to know each other, share our experiences with OCD. And I do see a question already, so I am going to go ahead and click on this one. Can sensory issues be a part of OCD? Yeah,
I feel like,
definitely.
I definitely
Yeah.
think they could really add into OCD.
So I'm wondering, I feel like there's a bunch of different parts to this question. So like sensory motor OCD is a subtype of OCD that is, can absolutely be part of somebody's OCD experience. But then also I think of sensory issues in terms of, I'm trying to think of how to word this, like certain things bother you, certain smells feel, like feeling of certain clothing, tags on your clothes, that can all kind of be part of OCD as well.
Mm-hmm.
What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, and I also feel like there can even just be like sensory things that can trigger you almost like
Mhm.
certain scents of things, the feeling of things. I feel like yeah, it's definitely a really big part of OCD.
Yeah, and something that I've dealt with that it's one of those things that I never know if it is OCD or if it's just who I
Yeah.
am, but is, excuse me, like what I've heard of called phantom smells, which is where you'll like smell something and no one else does. And like growing up, everyone always told me that I just had like a good nose because I could smell things that nobody else could. And then I recently am like realizing that that might not be a thing. Like it might be more of just like this I don't know, like an overactive imagination type thing where I feel like I can smell things and then I will engage in compulsions to kind of get rid of that smell. And that's
Yeah.
when I kind of made that link between OCD.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't
That's
know,
really
yeah, if that's what they're asking, but that is a great question. Can you associate a lot from OCD thinking you're not present in the moment? Yeah.
Oh yeah, OCD really just like takes you completely away from being present in any situation, right? Like you just get so focused on the thoughts that you're having or the compulsion that you're trying to engage in, or just trying to be like with your with your brain having red alerts going off. You're just
Mhm.
trying so hard to just escape that situation. And
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like I'm constantly trying to pull myself back into like being present with people or at
Mhm.
work or just out and about it. Yeah, it's really hard.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I one time heard somebody talk about time traveling. And I love that example because with OCD, that is what you're doing is you are either stuck in the past trying to solve this unsolvable, thing, or you are trying to fix the future or, alter the future in some way. And we can't do any of those things. And that's kind of what I think of in terms of not being present is like ruminating on an event that is coming up. No matter how much you ruminate and plan for it, it is not going to change that outcome. And that's, I don't know if that's a clinical term of disassociation or if that's just kind of that not being in the present. And I do see a follow-up question from her that says, what helps to snap back into reality?
I definitely think just acknowledging the thought that you're having, and I know it's a lot easier said than done, especially if you're at the beginning of your OCD recovery journey, or even if you're just at the beginning of your OCD journey, just kind of like acknowledging that, yeah, I'm having this thought right now where my brain really wants me to engage in whatever compulsion it is, and you're just like, right now I'm sitting with my friends and I'm hanging out with them, and I'm just going to pick that over sitting here and letting this thought turn into anything bigger and kind of take over more time from my day.
Yeah, and that just reminds me of mindfulness, just being aware of what's right around you. So, what you can feel, what you can hear, what you can see. And that's, that's not like an easy thing to do always, but it can just kind of bring you back into the present moment, which is really what you want to do with OCD, or what you try to do at least.
Yes.
Is it possible to completely recover from HOCD?
You can definitely recover. You won't ever be able to completely recover from OCD, unfortunately, just because it is a chronic mental illness. And so you will have times in your life where it's really difficult and times where you might be able to manage it. But you can definitely go through different bouts of being able to kind of overcome in that exact moment and learning strategies and how to support yourself.
Yep. Yeah. And like any type of OCD is OCD. And so it's, I know it's really hard to remember that when you are in the trenches, but whatever the OCD is kind of latching onto is still OCD, and it is treated with exposure and response prevention. And like Anna was saying, it is chronic, but it is definitely manageable with strategies and tools in place and a good support system.
Yeah. And I think that's so important to remember too, that no matter what the theme of OCD is, it's still OCD. Your thoughts can follow many different types of themes, but at the end of the day, it's still OCD, and the same strategies that you have work for any theme, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So is there a way to get rid of OCD fast?
What do you think? Yeah. I wish, but I feel like if you are able to sign up with an OCD or reach out to an OCD specialist and start some ERP therapy, it definitely really helps in the moment to kind of pull yourself out of your thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that having patience is necessary because it is not an easy fix. It's not, you can start therapy right now and wake up tomorrow and things are still going to be the same. It's not something that just, you kind of snap out of and it's gone, unfortunately. And I know that is hard to hear and hard to live with, but it is a reality in terms of living with OCD. It is, again, it's manageable. So it is something that we have to learn to live with and handle kind of on our own eventually. But yeah, it's not quick for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like especially once you kind of get to a point of acceptance and just acknowledging that I have OCD and this is just, it's what I have and I have to live with it, and I can get support from my family or friends or support groups and therapists that I know how to support myself. I feel like it becomes easier because you're able to kind of separate who you are and who OCD is.
Yeah, I think education is key for sure. Learning about it, connecting with others who have it, and have, made some progress in their recovery.
Yeah, for sure.
Vanessa, oops. My mouse is not participating today. I clicked on it 6 times. My anxiety has lowered with, so she is asking about sexual orientation OCD. For those of you who don't know, there are a lot of acronyms. Again, they are at the end of the day all OCD, but that is what that one is referring to. So my anxiety has lowered with SO, sexual orientation OCD, but when I feel better, I still have doubts. I try not to ruminate and checks take over. Is this still normal to have doubts? Is this normal to still have doubts? Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
OCD is the doubting disorder. You will doubt anything and everything possible.
I love the Canadian way that you just said doubt. But yeah, it is true. It is, even, no matter how many years into recovery somebody is, you still have doubts that you even have OCD sometimes. It is the name of the game, unfortunately. So, yes. And I know we say this every week, but anytime any question has, is it normal to dot, dot, dot? Like the answer is always yes. Anything that we do in terms of our OCD, it's part of it.
Yeah, it's trying to get you to second guess what
Anything,
you're
yeah.
thinking.
Yep. What is the best way to control cleanliness OCD when it is impossible to be tidy all the time?
I think that's kind of important to remember that it is almost impossible to be tidy all the time
Yeah.
unless that's like the only thing you do all day. And if it
Mhm.
is, that's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's in the question itself. It is impossible. So again, acceptance, recognizing that that's not an achievable goal. Making, some smaller goals might be something that helps you, Brooklyn, in terms of, certain areas that you can control. And I know that a lot of times OCD kind of hooks onto those things that we cannot control. And so having some control over certain things might be helpful in this sense.
Yeah, and the best way to control it, you can definitely reach out and get some support from an ERP or OCD specialist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's so many great questions tonight.
No, I love it. Okay, mouse there we go. Ooh, I don't know what is happening. Do you guys have any grounding techniques for when the intrusive thoughts are taking over?
You had a really great one at the beginning, doing like what you can hear, see,
Mhm.
touch, smell.
Yeah. Trying to think of like that is something that I think we kind of like preach a lot, but I do think it works. It helps you again bring you back to the present. I know personally I really like to get outside if I can, if possible, when the thoughts are really, really loud. Sometimes just being in nature. It's kind of cliche, I think, but it does help. It kind of brings you
For sure.
back to the present. Yeah. And it reminds you that there are bigger things than you, and not in a diminishing way, but just that the world is still spinning, the bugs are still
Mm-hmm.
moving. I don't know what bugs do. The birds are still chirping, and there are other things that are happening outside of your own mind, and that's I think a really good way to be grounded.
Yeah, changing up if I change up my environment, I find it's
Mhm.
really, really helpful. So if I'm inside, I go outside, or I try to change the room that I'm in, or I'll take a break from whatever it is that I'm doing, just to
Mhm.
like completely shift where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That time it worked the first time. Why do the thoughts feel so real?
They do feel really real. And it's
Mhm.
hard too because sometimes like OCD's latching on to what you care about and what you value the most, right? So it's attaching to things that you love and people that you care about and things that you care about. So it's really hard to kind of separate it sometimes from,
Mhm.
is this real or is it not? And it really does feel like it's real most of the
Mhm.
time.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think either of us have an answer. I don't think there really is an answer for why. But yeah, it's hard. It is really hard
Mm-hmm.
to figure out what's reality and what's our thoughts, especially with things like false memory,
Yes.
certain, I guess any subtype, but that, kind of feeds into that altered reality, I think is really challenging for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, okay. As someone with DPDR, do you know what that is, Anna?
I want to say depersonalization and derealization. I could
Okay.
be wrong. Maybe, Julian, maybe you could give us a little bit of, like,
Yeah.
if you could correct us if we're wrong, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And OCD, I find myself experiencing a deep fear of psychosis. This leads to checking compulsions and others, which cause me to feel disconnected from the present. Any tips? I just want to see if they said anything. That is what they meant. Okay, perfect. Good job. Yeah. So, and again, that's, just a type of OCD is that fear of, I hate to use the word, but that fear of going crazy, that fear of psychosis, that fear of losing touch with reality. And that, it's ERP and exposures and practicing just sitting with that possibility, sitting with that uncertainty, is really what I would recommend.
Yeah, and it's really hard at the beginning to sit with it and kind of accept that maybe this will happen, maybe this won't, but no
Mhm.
matter what I do, I don't have control over how a situation can end. It's really difficult, but it's short-term pain for long-term
Mhm.
gain. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I love that. Any thoughts on the role of parents when a child has OCD?
I think that's a great question, Ashley. I think
Mhm.
it's so great that you're tuning into Alive to support your child with OCD. Like, I just want to say that. I think that's
Mhm.
amazing. I think just like supporting and being a really solid foundation of knowledge for your child. So
Mhm.
knowing OCD, knowing some of the things that are going on with them and compulsions and thoughts that they're having, just so you can support them, and knowing when to stop and when to go with things, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's such a personal, experience is having a child who has OCD has got to be really challenging as a parent. Neither of us are parents, I know that, so it is hard to kind of put ourselves in a parent's shoes. But yeah, just have patience, have compassion, go with them to therapy if they are of age that is, feasible. Um, and yeah, just have so much compassion for them, but also just for yourself, for getting them
Yes.
help. It sounds like you are, know what to do in terms of where to turn to get them help. And yeah, I know with kids, you have to be creative with the exposures that you'll have to do. So just work with them. You know your kid best, and be there for them. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, if you need, like, if you feel the need to, like, reaching out to other parents that you might know or finding support groups,
Mhm.
um, and just remembering that, like, OCD affects everyone in the family. So your child may be struggling, but it's also completely valid for you to feel like you're struggling too, because
Mhm.
I'm not a parent, but I feel like it would be difficult to have a child with a mental illness and to not feel like you're, like, you can't, like, to not feel like you're taking things on sometimes.
Yeah, and going off of that, I know that OCD is called a family disease in the sense that it
100%.
impacts everyone that child lives with.
Yeah.
So not giving into their compulsions, as difficult as that is, because it does make them feel better for the time being. It is what they need, and I know that that's, again, when you're in it, is so hard to understand that, but not providing reassurance, not checking the things for them that they're asking you to check, because in the long run, that really does just keep holding them back, really, and continuing that cycle of OCD.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
How do you talk to your OCD thoughts when doing exposures? Any advice? Good
I
question.
like that is. I like that.
Yeah.
So for me personally, and it differs for everybody, depending on the plan that you have with your therapist and just like strategies that you've come up with. But for me personally, I have like exposure statements that I use when I'm in the middle of an exposure. There's a few different lines that I'll think of, and I'll just kind of repeat them to myself during it. Sometimes it amps up the anxiety, sometimes it reduces it, but I never know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I'm trying to think of I'm trying to think of a better answer because that's really good. Yeah. I think just knowing that, this is an exposure and it's not
Yes.
going to last forever, is something that helps. Again, when you're in it, that is not, you aren't going to believe that, I'm sure, but, just knowing that the anxiety will eventually come back down is something that I kind of try to remind myself at least.
Yeah, and it's hard not to think that when you're in that moment doing an exposure that it's
Mhm.
not going to last forever, because in that
Mhm.
exact moment it every second feels like 24 hours.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it just really drags on. So I like that. That's
absolutely.
good.
Um, yeah, so I have derealization and OCD, and it really makes me feel I'm going to lose control of myself, and I'm panicking. Is something experienced both at the same time, derealization and OCD?
Um,
Yeah. I mean, again, so I do want to caveat this that we are not clinicians. And I see there are a couple questions about links between OCD and other disorders, and that's not something that we can answer, just because that's not, we don't have training in that.
right.
Um, but I do think it is definitely possible to experience derealization and OCD at the same time. I know we've talked about it a little bit in other lives as well.
Yeah.
I know you can have intrusive thoughts of hurting other people, which I do have, but can you have intrusive thoughts of other people hurting you? I have vivid daydreams of bad things happening to me. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think a big thing that people forget sometimes is that you can have an intrusive thought about literally anything. Anything can become an intrusive thought, whether you harming someone, someone harming you, forgetting to do something. Yeah. Like the possibilities are endless for intrusive thought. Really.
Unfortunately, yeah, OCD is creative, and an intrusive thought is just an unwanted thought. So it, like you're saying, it can be about anything that, doesn't even make sense. I remember having, when I was younger, a little bit more than recently, but just having intrusive thoughts about like aliens and like people turning into aliens and things that like I've never seen in real life. Like I've never even seen a movie about that. Well, where did that come up with? Like, where did my brain come up with that? But it, again, it is kind of a silly example, but it really can be about anything. So yeah, daydreams can be really scary when they are, when they're scary like that. That's why they're intrusive.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. You can have intrusive thoughts about anything. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I love, Julie, and you responding that it's normal. Any thought that you're having is not sorry. I don't know. I get distracted when I hear the street, like cars in the street. Yes, any thought that you have is normal. It is not a meaning as to who you are as a person or what you value. It is just a thought. So yeah, any of them are normal.
Absolutely.
Can OCD be caused by trauma?
I think it can. I mean, I have almost lived with OCD my entire life. It wasn't really brought on by anything specific. And I know it's pretty similar for you too, Mollie.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, it can definitely it can sometimes stem, I think.
Yeah.
Again, we're not therapists. We're just.
Right. I was going to say, just from what I have heard is trauma can like trigger the OCD. But I don't honestly that's a very good question for a clinician. Because that's not our forte. How effective? Oh, that baby is so cute.
So cute.
How effective is ERP? I have my first session tomorrow.
Yay!
That's so exciting.
ERP, this is something my therapist told me on my very first day of ERP, and I was like, sure. And then towards the end, I was like, it's true. ERP is only as effective as you're going to make it. If you aren't implementing ERP into your day, if you're not following through, if you're not doing ritual prevention, it's not going to work. It's only as effective as you set it up to be.
Yeah. And I love that you said the RP in ERP.
Yes.
Because exposures, as difficult as they are, they're the easy part. Anyone can expose yourself to the thing that causes your anxiety.
Yes.
It's learning how to prevent that compulsion and resist that compulsion, resist the ritual. But yes, it is effective. And I did hear once that ERP is more effective for OCD than any other type of therapy is for any other type of illness or any other mental illness, which is amazing. It's so data backed, which I think is really comforting, knowing that it's been I hate to say proven, but that it's been shown time and time again to have really positive results. But like you're saying, if you work it, it will work for you.
Yes. Yeah, and then remembering that even though you finish ERP, doesn't mean that it's done forever. You still have to implement that into your life, and you still have to do exposures and expose your things to things.
Yeah, and I love that. ERP gives you tools and strategies so that you can do them on your own. It's not you're not meant to be in ERP therapy forever. It is, something that you should be practicing on your own one day. And I just think that's a really empowering, having that knowledge, I think can be really empowering, knowing that you'll get the skills to move on kind of, and to do them on your own.
I love that. It is definitely really empowering.
Yeah. How can I figure out my real sexual orientation with HOCD? I was pretty sure I was straight, but now I am really confused.
That's a hard question, and I don't want to give reassurance, but you might not find it out right away. It might take a little while. Yeah, what do you think, Mollie?
Yeah, and I was going to add that OCD latches on to the things that we value most, and so figuring out your identity is probably pretty important to you, and that's why it kind of is latching on to that. And yeah, like Anna was saying, it might not be something you ever know, and that's kind of the goal in this type of therapy, is not to answer the question. It is to accept that we might not know the answer. And that's hard. I mean, I know, again, it sounds so easy in theory, but that is really, really challenging.
It is, yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so Brian, I don't, again, these questions are really good, but they're not something that we can really answer in terms of schizophrenia, OCD. We know OCD. We can talk about OCD, and I don't want to provide any inaccurate information. We are not clinicians, so I would definitely point you in the direction of a psychiatrist or a clinician who can provide more accurate answers than we can.
Yeah. And even like Dr. McGrath does lives once a week. So maybe
Wednesday night.
tuning in and seeing if he has any, I don't know, sometimes that helps too, just asking a different person.
Yes, yeah, Dr. McGrath is awesome, and he is a practicing psychiatrist. So check him out. I think psychiatrist. I shouldn't have said that. I think he is. I know he is. Yes, I know he's a doctor. I know he's a clinician, a therapist. So Wednesday nights, and all of his lives are also saved on this YouTube page. So head there if you have any. I'm sure he's done some lives about that. So definitely check him out there.
Yeah.
And the difference between false attraction and real attraction.
That's really a similar answer to our other question, but we never really know, right? It's sometimes with OCD, it's really hard to give an answer, to kind of like solve an answer.
Yeah, and I think that the not OCD, like somebody who doesn't have OCD would say, when or what turns you on, what arouses you, what excites you, whatever it is. But those are all checking behaviors, and those are all compulsions. So I would say, again, sit with that uncertainty, sit with the maybe we don't know, maybe we'll never know. Yeah, that's not the answer you're looking for, I'm sure, but
hard. Yeah, it's hard.
It's very hard. Went a little far. Okay. Yes. So has anyone found that OCD can change over time from one obsession to another? For example, being tidy to hoarding every item. Yes.
100%. Yeah, I feel like I've experienced like both ends of the spectrum with, even with like contamination. And like the level of, before I had a really hard time with water in general, and water and like cleaning products, and I wouldn't go near them, I wouldn't touch them. And then for a while I like couldn't stop, like showering, bathing, washing things, cleaning stuff. So yeah, it can really morph quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so interesting, because I've never, contamination's never really been a big theme of mine, but there definitely was a time where I would not use soap. Like it was like, it was sticky, and I didn't like the feeling of it. And people have this misconception that OCD is all about cleaning and washing your hands, and it's the opposite in some people. That can be a compulsion, but it can also be something completely different. But yeah, to have it move from one obsession to another, and even within that obsession to kind of morph its way through things, is all definitely part of it, and is definitely something that people experience.
For sure, yeah.
So I'm sorry. I don't mean to be laughing at that question, because it's a really good question, and I think somebody did answer underneath it, that if you are wondering that, maybe. Yeah, it is. It's again, OCD is called the doubting disease. It's going to doubt. It's going to have us doubt whether we even have it, whether, and also my fake, for some reason, my mind went to like that existential, like, am I even a real person? Right. Like, am I even sitting here right now? Is this really the world? Is this how we're living? Right. Yeah. Am I in someone's dream right now? And the answer is always going to be maybe.
Yeah.
It's not, again, not the answer you're looking for, I'm sure, but it is part of OCD is, recognize, or part of OCD recovery, I should say, is recognizing that we don't know, we don't have the answers to that, and that's okay, that is, that we can live without knowing.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. So I don't see any other questions right now. So I hope that some more people join us and ask some questions.
They did mention above that they hadn't technically been diagnosed with OCD. They might have, that their therapist mentioned it's OCD without clear compulsions. I think it's always great to get a second opinion, especially someone who specializes in OCD. But it's also important to remember that compulsions aren't always physical. Like there are some people don't ever experience physical compulsions. It might just be mental compulsions, but you can also have a mix of both. So I think that's really great that you weren't really sure and you kind of decided to get a second opinion just to see. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, every therapist and doctor has a different way of kind of looking at things. So that's not, I do have, concerns if that turns into a compulsion, is going from doctor to doctor, getting different opinions. But yeah, a second opinion it's definitely wise if that's something that you think would provide some direction, some clarity. And yeah, compulsions. Yeah, clear compulsions is an interesting term because sometimes they're tricky. They're not always just, in your face things that you can see. I know when I started my treatment, I was given like a monitoring sheet to keep track of my compulsions. And there were so many on there that I was like, oh, that's a compulsion. Like I had no idea for the past 10 years of my life that was a compulsion. Until I was, kind of taught to track them. So,
yeah, there's many, and there's even a lot of like physical things that I did that I never knew were compulsions. And then after I chatted with my therapist, I was like, oh, actually, maybe that is something. That was just something I'd done my entire life and had never thought anything else about it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do think that, intentionally or unintentionally, we kind of make excuses for certain things, like for ourselves, that we, whether or not we know it or not, that are compulsions that we kind of make excuses. For example, I would always cut out tags of clothing. And I always said it was because it itched me and it bothered me. And like, maybe that was part of it, but really it was that I had to cut out the tags. Like that was a compulsion. I had to have them all removed, every single tag on any clothing I owned, for years of my life. And that, and I one day was like, I don't need to do this. Like, this is not something that is providing me anything. I didn't know that it was a compulsion for so long. And I, like I said, was kind of making excuses for why I was doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely relate to that.
Yes. I'm trying to click. Okay. I have a compulsion where I start pacing whenever I get even moderately anxious. It's my way of talking myself down and relaxing. However, it's gotten to the point where I get up every 5 minutes. Tips.
That's really hard.
And
that sounds like it's a really big disruption to your day as well, having to constantly get up and move around.
Yeah. I would, my first thought would be to delay that. So try to go 5.5 minutes or 6 minutes, set a timer and, I don't want to say don't let yourself, but don't let yourself give into that compulsion. Give it 6 minutes. See if you can go 6 minutes. See if you can go past that time or the time after that.
Yeah. Just sitting with it and just sitting like, there's nothing wrong with being anxious, and sometimes we can't control when we get anxious. We can't turn it on and off. So sometimes you'll just get anxious and you just need to sit with it and kind of just accept that you're anxious and you can't really do much about it.
Yeah. The anxiety itself cannot harm you.
Exactly.
And it's uncomfortable, it's not fun, and it can be really distracting. But in the long run, yeah, the more you sit with that and the more you allow yourself to feel that uncomfortableness, the better it does get better over time.
It does, yes.
Thanks for answering. You're welcome. I love, for lack of a better word, intriguing. That's good. I mean, it is so helpful to learn about this and just to hear other people, I think, share their experiences and ask. The questions that we get are different every single week. And I love that. They're always so deep. And it's awesome.
I feel like I'm always learning something new too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Are there similarities between OCD and autism?
Yeah, so fun fact, Mollie and I, well, Mollie doesn't anymore, but she previously did, but we both have, and I currently do work with autistic children and youth. And I feel like there can be quite a bit of similarities within the two. You can still have like a dual diagnosis or a diagnosis of one without the other, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities between them, just like rigidities and preferences to things.
It's so interesting. And I think that, not to get too technical, but ABA theory or ABA therapy is applied behavior analysis. Is that what you guys use in Canada?
No, I do a completely different model. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. And so what's yours called?
I work with, it's like an SLP.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so it kind of focuses on like social communication and then breaks down to like regulation and supports.
Okay, gotcha. So in the clinic that I worked in, it was called applied behavioral analysis, and it was like tracking the children's behaviors that were disruptive or that were detrimental, and then putting in place these different things to kind of steer the behavior in a different direction, and to break it down.
Support them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's just so interesting because when I was going through ERP, I was like, this feels very familiar, in the sense that you're recognizing the behavior and you are trying to change it. And it is so interesting to me. Yeah. Like you're saying, the rigidity, the preference for certain things to be a certain way and have to be that way.
The avoidance of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really
doing things.
No.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It is so interesting to me. And I feel like we could have an entire hour just on that.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But there are, and again, the comorbidity with OCD and other mental illnesses there are so many. I know ADHD is often diagnosed as well. I'm sorry, I don't mean to say like often, but can be something that is kind of
more commonly paired.
Yeah. Yeah.
And same with eating disorders as well. Yeah.
It's so interesting. And it makes sense. A lot of the things that kind of overlap have very similar behaviors, I guess, and mindsets.
Yeah, 100%.
Have you seen OCD in family members? I think 4 out of 5 of my family members have OCD.
I personally, to my knowledge, am the only individual in my family with OCD.
Yeah, that is such an interesting question because I do know that it can be genetic, so it kind of depends on. I think that it is one of those things again that can be kind of like a predisposition to OCD if somebody else has it in your genetic makeup somewhere. But yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I noticed at work today, like the mouse would not do what I wanted it to do.
I can hear you clicking, but nothing.
At what point does medication become necessary or optimal? I'm anxious all the time and I can't really tell if it's because of OCD or general anxiety. How would this fit in with medication?
So there's like many different medications that you can look at. You'd have to chat with a psychiatrist or your doctor about it. But I think it's definitely up to you and your medical team when it comes to making a decision about medications and your comfort level, and kind of taking a look at what you want the medication to treat as well, because you can treat many different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And there definitely are some side effects to medication. There's a lot of, it's a really
Yes.
personal decision. It's not something that anyone else can make for you. And I think that's really important too, is if and when medication does get added into your treatment, that is, your right and your decision to advocate for that if that is what you and your psychiatrist see fit.
Yeah.
And I think the stigma around medication is just really frustrating. So it's hard to kind of separate from that.
Yeah. And then also remembering that medication, if you do decide to go with it, if not, that's absolutely fine as well. But if you do decide to go with it, it's not an end all be all, and it's not like a quick fix either. It's just another thing that can provide support in your life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Can you please talk about being toxic for your partner because of your OCD and breakups that may be best in that situation?
That's really hard. I mean, I feel like it really depends on the situation and the individuals that you're with, but I feel like sometimes OCD can just become too much for other people. They might not be sure how to support you or support the situation. And they might just also feel like they're kind of caught in a cycle sometimes too, and they need out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like the breakup part, I think that's just with any relationship you have with anyone. It kind of just depends on your situation, and if you and the other person feel that it's best, but there's no right or wrong with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that OCD can be that like third wheel in your relationship that you don't
Yes.
want and that isn't welcome and that doesn't leave. And that's, we can't provide relationship advice, but if that is the case, it's hard, to figure out if the relationship is, I don't want to say worth it, but if the relationship is worth fighting for, or if OCD, it can get so messy. It is very hard.
Yeah.
Like,
And I mean, if you have the opportunity to, sometimes even getting that other person involved in therapy with you can really help, because they might just really not have any idea of what to do, or they might not have a full understanding of OCD. Because, like, personally, no matter how many times I try to explain things, sometimes to my boyfriend or to other people, they won't truly understand it unless they have OCD. It's really hard to explain things. So sometimes just having that extra person there to kind of to state.
yeah, like an outside point
Yeah.
of view to explain things.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So which medicine works best for OCD? So again, definitely get with a psychiatrist who can answer this question best. But antidepressants are often what people use. So SSRIs is what they're called, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Yes.
It has taken me many years to get that right.
I still don't get it right.
And that is what is typically prescribed for Medicaid or for OCD. Again, there are side effects. There are other illnesses that are in play sometimes, and that's not always the best case. But that's the kind of the typical route for medication.
Yes.
Can you have a compulsion where you have to replay something in your head that you saw so you know what happened? If you don't, it feels you may go crazy.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can have any compulsion, any reaction to any intrusive thought.
And I'm noticing people below as well are saying that it happens to them.
Yeah.
It absolutely can. It can be, it all is part of it for sure.
Sometimes they make sense, sometimes they don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Will COVID-19 pandemic cause an OCD influx?
I don't think it causes an influx, just because I feel like COVID has really been an opportunity for a lot of people to kind of learn about what OCD is versus what it isn't. And I don't think it's going to cause OCD in individuals, but maybe just spending more time alone by yourself or with others and have with like a specific group of people, maybe people have pointed things out, or have you've spent more time kind of noticing some
Mhm.
of your thoughts and patterns?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the pandemic in itself can cause OCD, but it definitely can, like you said, allow you to kind of recognize that in yourself. I know for me at the start of the pandemic is when I really started ERP therapy.
Yeah.
It's not that, oh, I'm echoing all of a sudden. It's not that, the pandemic caused my OCD or anxiety by any means, but it did give me that opportunity to seek teletherapy and start learning about OCD really.
Yeah.
And then I see another question about my 11-year-old has just been diagnosed with severe OCD, and as parents, we have no idea how to cope. What advice can you give?
Yeah, Imran, I would try to find like a support group. I know NoCD just launched a bunch of
Mhm.
different support groups, and I think there's one for supporting people in your life with OCD. I could be wrong,
Yeah, no,
but I mean that's a really great place to start to kind of see to like meet other people who have individuals in their life who are affected by OCD, and just kind of creating a little group that you can always relate to and have other people
mhm.
validate and understand your frustration and concerns.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we had mentioned it a little bit ago, but not giving in to their compulsions is going to be really beneficial. It is really, really challenging. But in the long run, it is going to help your child and help you as parents. So
Yes.
that would be kind of my first advice is to recognize what the compulsions are and work with them to not give in to them, not give in, not do them for them as well.
Yeah.
And if you are able to go to therapy within OCD, I am the peer advisor that works with all children. So if that was something that you guys were able to do and that's accessible for you, I would love to get a chance to chat with you and with your child, and kind of walk you through what therapy looks like within OCD. Not to give just a shameless plug, but we do provide therapy online for individuals just like your child, and I would love to get a chance to work with you guys. But yeah, I would say have some compassion for yourself. You are, getting them diagnosed is already a really big step at 11, especially. So you are definitely doing the right things by doing that.
You sure are.
Any tips on real event OCD? For me, it's stuck on how I lost my best friend and ruined our relationship. I don't know how to process my emotions in a healthy way while still having the obsessions.
I would definitely, if you're able to, reach out to either your therapist or try to find an ERP or OCD specialist, just to kind of start working on some strategies and some exposures.
Mhm.
But it's really hard when you feel kind of just you're stuck. You don't know what to do, what to think, what to say, and you're just like frozen in time.
Mhm.
It's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like any other theme, it is treatable, manageable. Yeah, with good exposures and a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Um, So this is a really interesting question. What do you guys think about the future of OCD treatment? Do you think that medication will ever get to a point that disorders like OCD will disappear completely?
Mm. I don't think we'll get to a point where they'll disappear just because it is like you do have imbalances in your brain and things are just
Mhm.
firing differently. But I definitely think like maybe in the future there will be more medication options maybe. But I think um, like even what No CD is doing is just kind of like the beginning of ERP therapy, having it easily accessible to people all around the world,
Mhm.
and being able to do it in your home is game changing. Like just like you said, Molly, I have a very similar story where I started ERP in the middle of the pandemic,
Mhm.
and it was really great because I was able to bring my therapist everywhere with me, and previously I wasn't able to do that. So I think it's just like we're just kind of starting with where we can go with it.
I love that. Yeah, I agree. Yes. So Dana asked, anyone else feel the need to rewind on Netflix or YouTube every 5 seconds, or every 5 minutes because you feel that you missed something important? I do it every time I watch anything. And I am just internally laughing because yes, when I first started dating my now husband, but when we were first started dating, he used to tell me that I was a really bad TV watcher because we would watch a movie or watch TV, and he would ask me, like, he would bring up something that happened in the plot, and I would be like, I have no idea that just happened. I couldn't tell you anything that they just said. And it was really frustrating to him, but also to me because I missed out on so much, like on such good media, because I was giving into my compulsions. So to answer your question, yes, that is, yeah, it is something that I think is pretty common. Is we can kind of zone out, yeah. And I think that people with OCD are zone outs are not the same as others necessarily. They are compulsions. Yeah, I mean that's my experience at least.
Oh yeah, I'm the exact same. My boyfriend, I'll be doing something, and he's like, "You need to focus and watch the show," and I'm like, "I can't."
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
like, "No, you can't." Yeah.
yeah. And what's so frustrating is he'll be like, "Well, what are you doing instead?" And I'm like, I can't tell you.
I don't tell you exactly, because then I have to give up my compulsion
Yeah.
that I'm doing, and then you're gonna notice it, and then yeah, it's a really tricky game.
Absolutely, yes. And that's, I think, like what we were saying at the beginning is mindfulness, bringing yourself back to the present. We can say that every day, but it's so hard to actually do when you are in it, when you're,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah.
And online shopping, yes.
Oh. Yeah. I do not do online shopping.
Okay. I'm trying to find a question. I'm sorry. There's so many. Oops.
Nope, that's
Great.
perfect.
Hello. What should be the mindset I should go for during ERP? Should I try to enjoy the thoughts and feelings or ignore them, or try to view them differently?
I think it's hard because you don't want to put value on the thought, and you don't, whether it's positive or negative value. So you don't want to necessarily sit there and force yourself to enjoy the things that you're thinking about and the things that you're feeling, but you also don't want to push it out. You kind of just want to like sit and accept the thought. And that doesn't mean that you're like, yes, whatever I'm thinking about is going to come true or happen. It's just accepting it and acknowledging that, hey, I have this thought right now that's rattling around in my brain. I hear it, but I'm going to continue doing this instead.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, kind of a cliche that I had heard is that thoughts are like clouds. I think I've said this in probably every other live as well. But it's true that they just kind of come and go. They're not they're not things we can control, and they're not things that matter really to who we are as a person or what we care about. So watch them go by, kind of have, I would say, indifference to them because they are just thoughts. They just exist. And our bodies do so much, and we, other than if you are dealing with somatic OCD, we don't really think about the processes that go on in our body. They just kind of happen. Our heart pumps blood, our lungs breathe for us, etc. And thoughts are just another process like that just kind of happens to us. They're not things we can do or control.
Yeah, I really like that. Just letting them go by like clouds, just watching the clouds. I'm going to start doing that. I'm use that from now on.
Yeah. Yeah, so sorry, there's so many really good comments. There's just not a lot of questions. So Gina, I love that. This is making me very emotional because I'm not alone and it feels good at the time. Thank you guys for being so open. I just started ERP. I hope it helps. It's trying to ruin my life and I won't let it. I love that. Yeah.
I think that's a really great mindset to have, that like you're not alone. It's great that there's other people here, and my dog.
You woke up.
I lost my train of thought.
But yes, I agree.
ERP, like it'll help, and not letting it ruin your life. Like it's there, it's a part of you, it's gonna be a part of your life. But and like there might be some times where it's harder, and there's some times where it's easier, but trying to make sure that it's not ruining and taking over is really a really great way to look at it.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you're definitely not alone in
No.
this. I mean, I'm just, in reading the comments, everything that somebody asks, there's 10 other people saying, I have that too, or I deal with that too. And that's, that's the truth. There's nothing that we're going through that somebody else hasn't also gone through.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes me really emotional too.
Me too.
Definitely helps knowing I'm not alone. A lot of my compulsions are mental, so it is hard to see them. And I think you mean just, oh, okay. So somebody else was talking about constant daydreaming. I can't think, it has a name too, and I can't remember what it's called. But yes, you're not alone, Dana. We're here. We're here for you and with you. And we've been there as well.
Yeah.
Does accepting the thoughts also apply to the feelings they come with?
It can. Yeah, just kind of acknowledging how you're feeling and moving on, not putting any value on it or putting any extra thought into it.
Yeah. And and that I'm wondering if they mean like physical feelings. I mean, the answer is yes, either way, but like a renal response or your heart racing or sweating or any of those like physical reactions to the thoughts. But yeah, then also the feelings, like the emotions that they bring up. It's all, accepting the presence of them is key.
And just like with our thoughts, we don't have control over how our body responds and reacts to things. So we don't have any control over how our body's going to feel about something too, which I think is, once you kind of realize that too, it helps a lot with managing OCD.
Yeah, absolutely. There are plenty of jokes that say you are now manually breathing or blinking, and for most people that lasts a few minutes. For me, it lingers basically permanently. Is that somatic OCD?
Yeah, it can for sure. It could be that.
Yeah, I think that obsession, I think sometimes has like this negative connotation that it's that it's something you are choosing, or that it's like that you're like self-centered about it, and that's not what it means. But just having an obsession with a certain bodily function, like you're describing, breathing, blinking, your heart racing, your heart beating. Yes, those are, I think, symptoms of somatic OCD.
Yeah.
Oh, maladaptive daydreaming. Yes, that is what it's called.
And just like you had mentioned earlier, Molly, like no matter what the theme is, it's still OCD, and the best way to treat it is through ERP.
Yeah. Absolutely. But if the problem isn't that I mind the thoughts, it's that I don't mind the thought, and that scares me. So me not minding the thought indirectly makes me mind the thoughts even more.
That sounds like a really creative OCD loophole. That's OCD trying to trick you into thinking that it's okay to not mind the thoughts, but then actually is it okay to not mind them? It's
Yep. If I'm not having anxiety about the thoughts, does that mean I like them?
Yes.
It is all definitely a part of of that cycle, of the obsessive compulsive cycle.
Yeah.
Does anyone else prefer to stand? I will be playing Scrabble or something. I love you just shaking your head already.
Oh, absolutely not.
So you do not like to stand?
No,
Okay.
Like I'll like walk, I'll do those things, but if I have to like stand in line somewhere, I'm like, I will just sit on this concrete. Like I'm out.
That's so interesting though. I wonder if like I don't know if that has anything to do with OCD, or if that's just like your.
It probably does, to be honest. I think because I just become so much more aware of how my body's feeling and how people are reacting and looking at me, and I'm just like, well, my dog's pacing behind me.
He likes to stand.
Yeah, he does.
I do remember though, when I was a kid, I used to like standing for dinner. And then my parents would like threaten to take my chair away, and they'd be like, well, you're not allowed to sit. And I don't know. I don't think that was OCD though. I think I was just like, I don't know, hyperactive. I was just a weird kid. Yeah.
We all were.
I love it. So I think this is probably a really good place to end. Thank you for Knowing these streams are there for us really helps. We're not alone, and I can't thank you two enough for helping us during these times of need. I love that.
I just want to thank everyone who joins these lives every week and for sharing such personal and like often sometimes really difficult things to share, and just knowing that there's other people out there that are like us with OCD. And yeah, I think it's really great that people come every week to this and they take a few moments to kind of be vulnerable and share some of their thoughts and feelings.
Yes, I love it, and I agree. It is certainly not easy. And I was just I was actually like literally before this live started, I was posting on my own personal Instagram, and I was talking about how these lives used to terrify me, and coming to them and just being vulnerable and talking to strangers at times or even friends is so difficult, and it's not so much anymore. And that's, that is ERP in work. That is exposures. The more you do it, the more your mind realizes like, I can do this, and this is not something to be so scared of. So thank you all for being here. It's always so great. And we will be back here same time next week.
We will next Thursday.
Have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, guys. See you later.